Hello, welcome to Biology, the scientific study of life. Each organ of the mammalian digestive system has specialized food processing functions. The general principles of food processing are similar for a diversity of animals, so we can use the digestive system of mammals as representative example. The mammalian digestive system consists of the alimentary canal and various accessory glands that secrete digestive juices into the canal through ducts, as shown in this figure. Peristalsis, rhythmic waves of contraction by smooth muscles in the wall of the canal, pushes the food along the tract. At some of the junctions between specialized segments of the digestive tube, the muscular layer is modified into ring-like valves called sphincters, which close up or close off the tube like drawstrings, regulating the passage of material between chambers of the canal. The accessory glands of the mammalian digestive system are three pairs of salivary glands: the pancreas, the liver, and gallbladder, which stores digestive juices. Using the human digestive system as a model, let's now follow a meal through the alimentary canal, examining in more. Let's start with tongue, and these are tongue, parotid gland, sublingual gland, and submandibular gland, which called salivary glands, and over cavity, pharynx, esophagus. Notice also the liver, gallbladder, pancreas. Closer look to closer look to stomach, pyloric, notice sphincter, stomach, and cardiac orifice. Notice also the closer look to duodenum of small intestine. Notice also closer look ileum of small intestine, appendix, cecum, ascending portion of large intestine. The human digestive system, after food is chewed and swallowed, it takes only 5 to 10 seconds for it to pass down the esophagus and into the stomach, where it spends 2 to 6 hours being partially digested. Finally, digestion and nutrients absorption occur in the small intestine over a period of 5 to 6 hours. In 12 to 24 hours, any undigested material passes through the large intestine and feces are expelled through the anus. Closer look here, a schematic diagram of the human digestive system. Salivary glands, mouth, esophagus, stomach, gallbladder and liver, pancreas, small intestine, large intestine, notice that, and rectum, anus. The oral cavity, pharynx, and esophagus. Both physical and chemical digestion of food begin in the mouth during chewing. Teeth of various shapes cut, smash, and grind food, making it easier to swallow and increasing its surface area. The presence of food in the oral cavity triggers a nervous reflex that causes the salivary glands to deliver saliva through ducts to the oral cavity. Even before food is actually in the mouth, salivation may occur in anticipation because of learned associations between eating and the time of day. Cloaking odors or other stimuli. Humans secrete more than a liter of saliva each day. Saliva contains a slippery glycoprotein, a carbohydrate protein complex called mucin, which protects the lining of the mouth from abrasion and lubricate. Food for easier swallowing. Saliva also contains buffers that help prevent tooth decay by neutralizing acid in the mouth. Antibacterial agents in saliva kill many of the bacteria that enter the mouth with food. Chemical digestion of carbohydrates, a main source of chemical energy, begins in the oral cavity. Saliva contains a salivary amylase, an enzyme that hydrolyzes starch, a glucose polymer from plants, and glucogen, a glucose polymer from animals. The main products of this enzyme's action are smaller polysaccharides and the disaccharide maltose. The tongue tastes food, manipulates during chewing, and helps shape the food into a ball called a bolus. During swallowing, the tongue pushes a bolus to the back of the oral cavity and into the pharynx. The region we call our throat is the pharynx junction that opens to both the esophagus and the windpipe trachea. When we swallow, the top of the windpipe moves up so that its opening, the glottis, is blocked by a cartilaginous flap. The epiglottis, you can see this motion in the popping of the Adam's apple. Notice that. During swallowing, this tightly controlled mechanism normally ensures that a bolus is guided into the entrance of the esophagus. Food or liquids may go down the wrong pipe because the swallowing reflex didn't close the opening of the windpipe. The resulting blockage of airflow choking stimulates vigorous coughing, which usually expels the material. If it is not expelled quickly, the lack of airflow to the lungs can be fatal. The esophagus conducts food from the pharynx down to the stomach by peristalsis. The muscles at the very top of the esophagus are um, striated voluntary. Thus, the act of swallowing begins voluntarily, but then the involuntary waves of contraction by smooth muscles in the rest of the esophagus take over. Notice also this is the when a person is not swallowing, the esophageal sphincter muscle is contracted. The epiglottis is up and the glottis is open, allowing air to follow through the trachea to the lung. Notice that. Esophagus sphincter contracted, esophagus and pulse of food, epiglottis up. Notice this closer look. And the swallowing reflex is triggered when a bolus of food reaches the pharynx. Notice that. Epiglottis down, glottis up, and close it. Esophageal sphincter relaxed. Notice that. The esophageal sphincter relaxes, allowing the bolus to enter the esophagus. 5. Notice that after the food has entered the esophagus, the larynx moves downward and opens at the breathing passage. Notice also epiglottis up, epiglottis down and up, esophageal sphincter contracted. 6. Notice that closer look, waves of muscular contraction, peristalsis, move the bolus down the esophagus to the stomach. The stomach. Okay. The stomach stores food and performs preliminary steps of digestion. This large organ is located in the upper abdominal cavity, just below the diaphragm, with accordion-like folds and a very elastic wall. The stomach can stretch, accommodate about 2 liters of food and fluid. It is because the stomach can store an entire meal that we do not need to eat constantly. Because beside storing food, the stomach performs important digestive functions. It secretes a digestive fluid called gastric juice and mixes this secretion with the food by the churning action of the smooth muscles in the stomach walls. Notice that. Closer look. Gastric juice is secreted by the epithelium lining numerous pits in the stomach wall with a high concentration of hydrochloric acid. Closer look. Hydrochloric acid. Gastric juice has a pH of about 2, acidic enough to dissolve iron nails. One function of the acid is to disrupt the extracellular matrix that binds cells together in meat and plant material. The acid also kills most bacteria that are swallowed with food. Also present in gastric juice in pepsin, an enzyme that begins the hydrolysis of protein. Pepsin breaks peptide bonds adjacent to specific amino acids, cleaving proteins into smaller polypeptides, which are later digested completely to amino acids in the small intestine. Pepsin is one of the few enzymes that works best in a strongly acidic environment. The low pH of gastric juice denatures unfolds, which means the proteins in food increasing exposure of their peptide bonds to pepsin. What prevents pepsin from destroying the cells of the stomach wall? Pepsin is secreted in an inactive form called pepsinogen by specialized cells called Jeff cells located in gastric pits, as shown in this figure. Notice that. Over cells called parietal cells also in the pits secrete hydrochloric acid. The acid converts pepsinogen to active pepsin by removing a small portion of the molecule and exposing its active site. Because different cells secrete the acid and pepsinogen, the two ingredients do not mix, and pepsinogen is not activated until they enter the luminal cavity of the stomach. Activation of pepsinogen is an example of positive feedback. When some pepsinogen is activated by acid, activation occurs at an increasingly rapid rate because pepsin itself can activate additional molecules of pepsinogen. Many other digestive enzymes are also secreted in inactive forms that become active within the lumen of the digestive tract. The stomach's second defense against self-digestion is a coating of mucus secreted by the epithelial cells of the stomach lining. Still, the epithelium is constantly eroded. The mitosis generates enough cells to completely replace the stomach lining every 3 days. Gastric ulcers lesions in this lining are caused mainly by the acid-tolerant bacterium Helicobacter pylori. Though treatable with antibiotics, gastric ulcers may worsen if pepsin and acid destroy the lining faster than it can regenerate. About every 20 seconds, The stomach contents are mixed by the churning action of smooth muscles. You may feel hunger pangs when your empty stomach churns. Sensations of hunger are also associated with the brain centers that monitor the blood's nutritional status and levels of the appetite controlling hormones. As a result of mixing and enzyme action, what begins in the stomach as a recently swallowed meal becomes a nutrient-rich broth known as acid chyme. Most of the time, the stomach is closed off at both ends. The opening from the esophagus to the stomach, the cardiac orifice normally dilates only when a bolus arrives. The occasional backflow of acid chyme from the stomach into the lower end of the esophagus causes heartburn. If backflow is a persistent problem, and ulcer may develop in the esophagus. At the opening from the stomach to the small intestine is the pyloric sphincter, which helps regulate the passage of chyme into the intestine. When squirt at a time, it takes about 2 to 6 hours after a meal for the stomach to empty this way. Small intestine.